Traditionally, or should I say historically, schizophrenia was misdiagnosed from today's standpoint as an alternate personality, a split personality. Nobody says that anymore. But on the topic of alternate or multiple personalities, it's a very interesting investigation to go into that area. It's a lack of unity due to stress, severely enough imposed upon the psyche that a new personality bud sprouts out of the primary personality, and it has its own memory apart from the main personality, and it may be visited by the individual as a recreational reprise from the stress that originally induced it. So it gives the person safe haven, and it also separates the memory of abuse, or trauma, shall I say, trauma, from the main personality, so the main personality doesn't have to take ownership for something it can't account for, and it does not want to be held responsible for, because very often in trauma or abuse, the victim is either purposefully made to feel guilty or just happens to fall into the train's mindset of blaming themselves for what happened. They don't forgive themselves. So either case, and the abuser can take advantage of that tendency and encourage the victim to blame themselves for what the abuser is doing to them. Be that as it may, any kind of abuse, self-induced, will help the individual revisit that alternate personality and hide there. It's a game of hide and seek. Oh, you can't find me. Try and find me. And you can't, because the person's locked away in their little cage. So when people just drink recreationally, just socially, they're not alcoholics. They just want to drinking, for example. They're visiting an area of their psyche, their experience, which stands apart from their normal life, their day job life, their normal existence. Because you're not allowed, right, in society to be drunk while working on the job. I mean, not that people don't do it, but it's not the preferred. I mean, you don't expect to get hired that way. Maybe you acquired after you've worked at your job a little while, and then you start coming to work late because you can't get up in the morning, or you come to work with a what do they call it? Overhang? Not an overhang. An overload? A hangover. An overhang. Whatever. Yeah, it's a cliff. It's just hanging. It's an overhang, and you're about to fall. Oh, you're about to fall off the cliff. Okay. And so there are a lot of different parallel psychological traits to alcoholism or abuse or trauma, such as, I can't seem to wake up in the morning to go to work on time. It's the same thing. So I can appreciate better now what alcoholism amounts to, or somebody who's prone to violence, but only when they pop into their alternate personality. Because it teaches me about myself, too, in the course of, meeting people who have different variations of this same theme, of this other personality, this other persona, that this mask they put on when they get into that makes them feel okay. Because that's the whole point. Not just to hide from trauma, but to feel okay about yourself. Now, unfortunately, it's a shortcut. And it's okay, That's the way nature does things. She provides for shortcuts, but in the long term, it's not the solution. Because it's not bliss. And bliss can only exist in a state of unity. Union with oneself. such that all the different fragments of the personality have to join in with the other fragments, and there's accountability. The individual has to be accountable to all the different experiences that it has gone through. Doesn't mean you want to revisit all of them, but they should be available for an accounting at any time. You can't hide from them. In other words, you can't set up a psychological structure in which, yeah, well, I don't really want to know about these things, so I'm going to tuck them away. And they're never available when I need them because I don't want them to be available. They're that bad, you know. It won't do. And this is why people go through unstressing when they transcend during meditation, because they're unifying segments of or fragments of their psyche. They're not part of the whole. They're not. They're not part of the primary character or psyche of the individual. And in the process of unification, the stress has to go, and it goes really fast, and I go, my God, what's that? I'm experiencing all this fear for no reason. I went on a rounding course. That's an extended meditation on the weekend with my parents when I first started to meditate, and they had been taught, and I was supposed to go on a rounding course in order to go to the Maharishi International University in Fairfield. I was supposed to take at least one rounding course. So I went with my mom and my stepfather, and out of the blue, without reason, I just started crying. It was in the afternoon session, where you meet and or watch a video and discuss experiences and whatnot. How's your meditation doing? And I just started to cry. It was like, I don't know why I'm crying, Mommy. I just think I gotta cry. I was so embarrassed. I don't want to do this again. I was so embarrassed. A teenager, it's like, wow, this is a little embarrassing here. It's so freaky. Well, spontaneously, a section of my consciousness, or personality, let's say, was rejoining. You want to rejoin the party? Hey, you find somebody who's a loner out there. Hey, come join the party. Don't be out here all by yourself. We got a party going on in the house. So a little section of my psyche was being spontaneously absorbed into the party, whether it wanted to or not. And it was like, and all this stress that was serving as the membrane, shall we say, that had quarantined that section of my psyche and kept it quarantined. So the barrier melted, and it was undergoing the process of reunification. And probably the unification had already occurred. And then the stress goes as a consequence. I'm not quite sure about the sequence of events, but be that as it may, they're not simpatico. You can't have unity and stress. You have to have bifurcation of the psyche into subdivisions. And it's a funny thing, in our culture, we actually applaud anybody who quarantines different sections of their psyche. We call it efficiency. We call it objectivity. Ooh. But in actuality, it leads to psychosis, at the very least neurosis, Not a good idea. Let the machine do that. No, not good. Not good for psychological development. You can't expect a baby to do it, so why are you doing it, adult? So I think I've covered just about everything. And then some. Oh boy. So it doesn't matter whether... See, there's this stereotypical stigma in which we... Sax and violins, saxophones, sax and violins, sex and violence. Why do we equate them? Because they're different. There are different ways to face the self. See, most of the time, The split personality maintains the split. But there must be a time when it momentarily breaks down. And during orgasm might be one of those times, possibly. And during violence, rage, during periods of rage, that may be the case as well. Yeah, I suspect that's when the personality fragmentation breaks down. And then in order to maintain stability, the individual regroups and rebuilds anew the walls of China or the Berlin walls, so, whatever they may be, to reestablish the various quarantine situation of the fragmented personality. So it's not rock solid. It can break down, but only temporarily, because A, there's a habit pattern of maintaining it, and B, it freaks the person out. Because there's nothing to replace the stress. So they go back to the stress. And stress is like a security blanket. Oh, I remember this. Oh, yes. Oh, I miss my son. Oh, I go back to that. I and make all the various excuses. Oh, I'm an irresponsible parent for allowing myself to have lost my son. And I must go back to that and keep kicking myself in the butt. I don't allow myself to unify. I don't allow myself to reintegrate. I don't allow myself to establish bliss and let it stay instead of kicking it out, so to speak. So I'm married to my fragmentation, and that's not good. Nope, I have a fragmentation, and it's not good. Hopefully, in this lifetime, I will live to see it melt into union. I'm working on it. It takes time. From different angles of approach. Any which way I can approach it, try to melt those barrier reefs to reintegrate my lost self. Because I can't get my son back. There's no way. I have to get back the part of myself that I threw away when I let it traumatize me, when I let it get to me. Because I was struggling not to let it get to me. And I had to work feverishly, almost constantly, not quite constantly, but almost so, to re-establish unity with myself, bliss, and not fall into the trap of a fragmented personality, which is basically a cop-out, because you don't do anything as a fragmented personality to resolve the split, the schism in your psyche, and face the trauma and let go of it and not own it anymore. No, and instead I keep owning it and protecting it, giving it safe haven when it doesn't belong up here, It doesn't belong here, It's go bye-bye, but no, it's still here. Oh, my God. So, anyway. And you know what the best antidote for that is? Because usually trauma, the worst kinds of trauma, there are physical traumas, obviously, but then there are these psychological traumas that we experience socially. Some interaction with some other person incurs the trauma. And the best antidote for that is to mix with as many people as possible and spread your manure around. If the trauma is related to nature, then you go traveling, you go hiking, you see, you go hide in nature, and see all these different places, go touring. Variety usually helps. Depending on the nature of the trauma, will determine what kind of environment of variety is required to diversify the outlook and broaden the perspective so that it doesn't stay focused on that one singular point of trauma, of memory of trauma, that the brain is stuck on. Holding on to dear life, drowning, and then it's holding on not to a life raft, but to a lead weight. It's quickly taking you to the bottom of the ocean, but you're holding on anyway. Talk about wrong responses to challenges. And that's the problem with a split personality is you always do the opposite of what you need to do to get well. Because you were so traumatized, you were so scared that you don't even want to let go of what you've got, the trauma. And so you do everything to hold on to it and protect it and give it safe haven. And that, if that requires splitting off a fragment of the personality, so be it. It's bizarre, but it really helps to meet people who are like yourself, if you have it, but are different. And then you can make a study of them and say, instead of blaming, it's all your fault. No. You're a case study, so I can get to learn about myself. And hopefully grow out of this shit, because I don't need to keep staying in it. But it's very hard to give up a habit, especially a psychological habit. Charlie Lutz used to say that. Mental habits are the hardest ones to break. And I learned recently what I kind of suspected over many years, decades, that if you've been an alcoholic over any number of lifetimes, you don't need to take a drink to revisit that state of mind. You simply induce it by willful intent. Or hanging out with a bunch of drunks, and by way of entrainment, 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 your brain waves start to function in synchronicity with the alcoholic's brainwave, and you start becoming drunk even though you didn't take a drink. And it keeps lingering until you break out of it, and it's not that easy to break out of a mental habit pattern that does not have any organic cause, but like the chicken and the egg, which came first, it doesn't matter, because once you get the cycle going, it just feeds on itself, and then you create the chemicals that reinduce the brain waves that you merely entrained with to begin with. Or maybe you inhaled a few vapors of what they were drinking. But the point is, it can be restarted either way, and it's maintained both ways through positive feedback. So it's really a difficult thing to do, is to break a mental habit, whatever it might be. Because there's the mental aspect, there's the physical aspect, and they both contribute to positive feedback of maintaining the bad habit. And it's very hard to break for that reason. So it does pay to try to approach the problem from various angles, because it's not going to be that easy to break, especially if it's been following you lifetime after lifetime. It's very hard because now it's in your soul. Oops. You've really got to work at breaking the habit. It's not that, and it may not be broken in one lifetime. It may take several. Anyway, now I think I've said enough. On a subject that maybe most people don't want to listen to. But I have had the fortune, be it good, bad, or indifferent, of befriending an alcoholic recently, and I was very much pained with being sent away. I'm sure he didn't mean me to leave on permanently, but I took it to be permanent because I had had enough of being sent away. Oh, I don't want you to see me in this state. Well, what state am I supposed to see you in? Only when we're having happy times? I'm just your happy friend? No, that's not friendship. Friendship means loyalty, which means all the time, both in the good times and the bad times, and not in the times that embarrass you. No. Shame. There's no room for shame here in friendship. Otherwise, it's not friendship. It's just exploitation, taking advantage of each other's good times, and not bad times. That's not friendship. That's exploitation. It is. Yeah, I know. He said, no, I'm not using you. Oh, really? I didn't want to argue. I'm telling you, but I didn't want to argue. It's different if somebody has, like they take marijuana because they've got cancer, right? And they want to self-medicate for the pain, and they want to stop the growth of the cancer. Or maybe they have rheumatism, severe rheumatism, and they want to drink a beer because they've had this lifelong, whatever it's called, that gives them pain in their hands or whatever. It's a little different. Obviously, that becomes a habit too. But regardless, when it's merely the memory of trauma and the trauma no longer occurs and the memory alone haunts the person, then you have to wonder, oh my God, how long is this friendship going to keep up? Because I don't know if I can keep up my end much longer. I tried as long as I could, out of pity and a desire of needing a friend myself, but this can't keep up. Yeah. I did the best I could. Because quite frankly, I don't think the guy would want to turn the tables and now cater to my needs as the prime focus instead of me catering. I mean, he was nice, it was a little bit of give and take, but mostly take on his part, and I was willing to do most of the giving, but I don't think I can do that anymore. No, I'm spent. Anyway, that's the reason for this video. Enough is enough. So, because I'm not amused. Maybe I was the first day, and then I find, this is not amusing so much anymore. Yeah, guess why? Because we've got ourselves here a problem, and denial to maintain the problem. Oh, good grief. And I'm not dealing with a real person. I'm just dealing with a fragment of the person. Interesting. Tisk tisk. Oh, God. All right.